Tonight, Elon Musk faced off against Victoria Caldwell in what was supposed to be a brutal takedown. But within minutes, the power dynamic flipped. The tough questions meant to corner him became his greatest weapons. By the end, it wasn't Musk on the defensive, it was Caldwell struggling to keep control. What did he say that left the studio speechless? How did he turn the interview in his favor? Stay until the end to find out. Before we begin, comment where you're watching from, like this video, and subscribe. The stage was set. Bright, blinding studio lights cut through the darkness, reflecting off the sleek black floors. Towering LED screens cast a deep blue hue over the audience, their eyes locked onto the grand stage before them. Every seat in the studio was filled, from Wall Street executives to tech enthusiasts, all anticipating a spectacle. This wasn't just an interview, it was an event. At the heart of it all sat Victoria Caldwell, the unshakable journalist known for dismantling the world's most powerful figures. CEOs, politicians, cultural icons, none had escaped her razor-sharp questioning. She thrived on contradiction, on forcing her guests into moments of hesitation, unraveling their carefully curated personas. Tonight, her sights were set on Elon Musk. The tension in the air was electric. The audience wasn't here to witness a polite conversation, they expected a reckoning. Many believed Musk, despite his brilliance, was too reckless, too powerful. He had built rockets, electric cars, and artificial intelligence, reshaping industries at will. But was he truly accountable? Tonight, Victoria intended to strip away the mystique and expose the truth. Then he entered. No grand entrance, no dramatics. Just Elon Musk, effortlessly composed, dressed in a simple black suit, no tie, no embellishments. He walked with a quiet confidence, not of a man about to be interrogated, but of someone who enjoyed the game. His expression was unreadable, half amusement, half calculation. Victoria sat motionless, her polished nails tapping lightly against her stack of notes, a subtle signal that she was ready. The cameras zoomed in, the soft hum of anticipation growing louder. Finally she spoke, her voice smooth yet commanding. "Mr. Musk, let's get straight to it. You've been called a visionary, a disruptor, even a genius. But you've also been called reckless, dangerous, irresponsible. So let's begin with the question that's on everyone's mind." She let the silence stretch, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a slow-building storm. Then, she leaned forward, her piercing gaze locked onto Musk. "Do you truly believe that one man, you, should have this much control over the future of technology?" The audience held their breath. The game had begun. Musk sat back, fingers resting lightly on the arm of his chair. No immediate reaction. No flinch. No shift in posture. Just a slight tilt of his head, the faintest trace of a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. Then he spoke. "Control, now that's an interesting word choice." And just like that, the first move was made. "Rocket!" Victoria Caldwell leaned forward, her polished nails tapping once against the sleek glass table. A subtle yet deliberate move, signaling that she was about to strike. The tension in the studio was thick, the kind that made every second feel stretched, every word heavy with intent. Her voice, smooth but edged with steel, carried effortlessly through the studio. "Elon, people call you a visionary, a disruptor, even a genius. But they also call you reckless, irresponsible, dangerous." She let the words hang, watching for a reaction. There was none. Just Musk, seated across from her, his posture relaxed yet unreadable. She tilted her head slightly, her gaze locking onto his with quiet intensity. "Do you truly believe that one man, you should have this much control over the future of technology?" Silence. The audience barely breathed, their eyes darting between the two figures on stage. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the first real challenge, the first attempt to corner Musk, to force him into a defensive stance. Any other CEO might have stumbled, might have rushed to clarify, to justify, to defend. But Musk didn't. Instead, he did something far more powerful. He simply waited. 3 seconds. 4. 5. The silence wasn't empty, it was deliberate. He let it stretch just long enough to make people uncomfortable, just long enough for anticipation to build. Then finally he moved. Not much, just the smallest tilt of his head, the faintest ghost of a smile at the corner of his lips. When he spoke, his voice was measured, deliberate, completely unshaken. Control, now that's an interesting word choice. The shift was almost imperceptible, but it was there. A subtle shift in momentum, a shift in power. Victoria's expression remained composed, but there was something behind her eyes, a flicker of recognition. She had framed her question as an accusation, forcing him into a position where he would have to defend himself, to explain why he deserved such influence. But Musk wasn't playing defense. He had just rewritten the rules of the game. "Would you call it something else?" she countered, recovering quickly. Musk gave a small shrug, utterly unfazed. "I would call it influence." He let the word settle before continuing, his tone as casual as if they were discussing the weather. "Influence that comes from innovation, not politics. If people buy an electric car, launch a satellite, or use AI to improve their business, it's because they see value. Nobody is forcing them." And just like that, the conversation was no longer about control. It was about impact. And for the first time that night, Victoria Caldwell wasn't entirely in control. Victoria didn't back down. She wasn't the kind of journalist who lost control easily. If Musk had deflected her first attack, she was more than ready to strike again. This time, she leaned in, her voice taking on a sharper edge, pressing the weight of her next question with precision. "But Elon, you don't just influence one industry, you influence them all. AI, transportation, energy, even social media. Doesn't it concern you that one man holds this much power? Shouldn't it concern the rest of us?" There was the real question. Not just about Musk's companies, but about the concentration of power itself. A question designed to make him seem like an unchecked force, a man whose reach had extended too far. The kind of question that could make even the most composed figure hesitate. But Musk didn't hesitate. If anything, his expression softened, almost as if he found the question amusing. He exhaled slowly, as if giving it genuine thought, before his gaze settled back on Victoria. His voice remained calm, his tone unshaken. "Power," he said, letting the word linger, "comes from coercion. Influence, on the other hand, comes from value." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. Musk didn't break eye contact. He continued, voice steady, deliberate. "I've never forced anyone to buy a Tesla. No one is required to launch a satellite with SpaceX. People don't have to use AI or Starlink or Neuralink. They choose to. They see value in what we create, so they use it. If they didn't, these companies wouldn't exist." The simplicity of his response made it all the more devastating. He wasn't dodging. He wasn't justifying. He was reframing the entire argument. The audience had come in expecting a takedown, expecting to see Musk squirm under the weight of tough questions. But now their expressions were shifting. What had started as an interrogation was beginning to feel more like a debate Musk was controlling. Victoria recognized the shift, too. Her attacks were hitting their mark, but Musk wasn't reacting the way most guests would. He wasn't on the defensive. He wasn't scrambling for answers. He was shaping the conversation in real time, redefining the very premise of her questions. For the first time, the audience wasn't sure who was really winning. Victoria Caldwell was a professional. She had faced countless corporate giants, political leaders, and media moguls, exposing their contradictions, their missteps, their hidden motives. She was not used to losing control of a conversation. But something was happening. Musk was no longer just answering questions, he was steering the discussion. She couldn't allow that. Her posture remained composed, but there was a new urgency in her tone as she leaned in, her voice sharp, calculated, precise. "Power without accountability is dangerous, Elon." The words were deliberate, designed to pierce through his carefully structured argument. When the media makes a mistake, they're held accountable. But who holds you accountable? What happens when your AI or technology causes harm? When Tesla makes a mistake, when SpaceX fails, when Neuralink faces controversy, who oversees you? Who stops you? A perfectly framed question. It wasn't about innovation anymore, it was about consequences. She was putting Musk in a position where any answer could make him look reckless, uncontrolled, even dangerous. And for a moment, the audience felt the weight of it. The silence stretched. The cameras zoomed in. The tension in the studio was razor sharp. But Musk didn't flinch. Instead, he did what he had done all night. He turned the question on its head. His eyes locked onto hers, and his voice remained steady, almost casual. "When Tesla makes a faulty car, we don't silence critics. We recall the vehicle and fix the problem. He paused, letting the words settle. When SpaceX has a failed launch, we don't hide the data. We live stream it, analyze what went wrong, and build something better. Another pause. A calculated breath. And then the final strike. But tell me, Victoria, when the media gets a story wrong, what happens? The audience shifted. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. For the first time, Victoria wasn't the one holding the microphone. Musk was. His words hit like a thunderclap. The conversation had flipped. What was supposed to be an attack on Musk's unchecked power had suddenly become a question about media accountability. The very institution Victoria represented had been put on trial, live, in front of millions. She didn't react immediately. She couldn't. She had expected a defense. She had expected Musk to explain, to justify, to acknowledge the weight of his influence. Instead, he had done something far more powerful. He had questioned her authority to ask the question in the first place. For the first time that night, Victoria Caldwell hesitated. The game had changed, and everyone knew it. Victoria Caldwell had built her reputation on control. Every interview she conducted was a masterclass in precision. She set the pace, dictated the narrative, and led her guests exactly where she wanted them to go. But tonight, the cracks were showing. The energy in the studio had shifted. Musk was no longer reacting to her questions. He was shaping them, twisting each attack into something else entirely. She had underestimated him. Not his intelligence, but his ability to reframe the conversation in real time. And now the audience could feel it. She couldn't let this continue. Victoria straightened her posture, her grip tightening slightly around the pen in her hand. If she wanted to regain control, she had to strike hard, and she had to strike now. This wasn't just about a difficult question. It was about forcing Musk into a contradiction he couldn't escape. Her voice, calm but sharpened with intent, cut through the tense air like a blade. Elon, you've warned the world about AI, she began, her gaze locked onto his, unwavering. You've said it could be humanity's greatest existential threat. And yet, you are the one creating it. So tell me, how do you justify that? How do you live with the idea that you might be the one responsible for a technology that could destroy us all? The studio went silent. This was the moment. The question wasn't just designed to challenge him. It was meant to corner him. If he admitted that AI was too dangerous, he would look reckless for developing it. If he downplayed the risks, he would seem either naive or dishonest. Either way, it was a trap. For a fraction of a second, Victoria thought she had him. Then she saw it. That smile. It was subtle, just the faintest flicker of amusement at the corner of his lips. Not arrogance, not deflection, something else entirely. He wasn't rattled. He wasn't scrambling for a defense. He was enjoying this. Elon Musk leaned back slightly, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the arm of his chair, as if weighing his response. Then, with a quiet breath, he spoke. Let me ask you something, Victoria. He didn't answer her. Instead, he took control of the question itself, shifting the weight back onto her. Should we stop developing medicine because it can be misused? The audience barely had time to process it before he continued. Should we halt nuclear research because it can be weaponized? A murmur rippled through the studio. Victoria's expression remained composed, but there was a flicker, a moment of recalibration. Musk pressed forward. Should we abandon space exploration because rockets sometimes fail? And just like that, the conversation wasn't about him anymore. It wasn't about AI. It was about progress itself. Victoria had tried to paint him as reckless, as a man playing with fire. But in an instant, he had reframed the entire discussion. This wasn't about whether technology was dangerous. It was about whether fear should dictate progress. She knew what he had done, and she had no way out. If she argued against his point, she would be arguing against every major scientific breakthrough in history. If she admitted he was right, she would be conceding the most crucial attack of the night. It was checkmate. For the first time, her fingers tightened around the pen in her hand. A small, almost imperceptible movement, but Musk noticed. He had spent years reading people, studying reactions, recognizing the exact moment when control began to slip. And right now it was slipping from her. The audience wasn't looking at Victoria anymore. They were looking at him. The realization settled into her posture. She exhaled slowly, her eyes scanning her notes, as if searching for the next counterattack. But there wasn't one. Elon Musk had done what no one had done to Victoria Caldwell before. He had turned the interview against her. Victoria knew this was her last chance. The interview had not gone the way she had planned. She had entered the studio expecting to expose Elon Musk, to put him on the defensive, to strip away the image of the untouchable tech mogul. But now the power dynamic had completely flipped. She was the one being forced to react, the one recalibrating with every answer he gave. The audience could feel it too. This was no longer an interrogation. This was a battle of narratives, and Musk was winning. But she wasn't ready to surrender just yet. Her fingers curled slightly against the glossy desk, her expression remaining neutral, but her posture revealing the weight of the moment. The silence before her next question was deliberate, strategic. If she was going to make one final move, it had to be the right one. The one that would force Musk to reveal something he hadn't planned to. Her voice, smooth but firm, cut through the heavy air. There are many who say that you and other tech billionaires are playing God. That you are shaping the future in your own image, without accountability, without concern for the voices of the many. What do you say to them? This was it. The final accusation. The idea that Musk was not simply a businessman, not just an innovator, but a force rewriting the rules of human existence, without permission. It was the kind of framing that could make him seem arrogant, even dangerous. The audience leaned in. Musk didn't react immediately. He exhaled, slow and controlled, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled. Not the smirk of someone dismissing a trivial question, but the kind of smile that carried complete certainty. He knew exactly what she was trying to do. And it wasn't going to work. His voice was calm, effortless, and yet filled the room with a quiet authority. They give me too much credit. The simplicity of his response was disarming. The audience tensed, waiting for him to continue. Musk let the moment stretch just long enough before delivering the final blow. I'm not playing God. I'm just an engineer. Silence. A heavy, undeniable silence. And then something happened. Victoria didn't speak. For the first time all night, she had nothing left to say. Because there was nothing left to say. She had played every card, used every tool at her disposal, framed every question to push Musk into a corner. But no matter what she threw at him, he hadn't just evaded. He had dismantled the very premise of her arguments. The audience recognized it. The energy in the room shifted once more, but this time, completely in Musk's favor. They weren't just watching a man hold his ground. They were watching someone take control of the entire conversation. What had started as an attempt to put Musk on trial had become something else entirely. A moment of undeniable dominance. Victoria exhaled, her lips pressing together as she adjusted her notes. The interview had to end. She knew it. The producers knew it. Everyone knew it. She gave a small nod, a professional gesture to close the show. Elon Musk, thank you for your time. Musk gave a polite nod in return. Thanks, Victoria. The cameras cut. The lights dimmed. The interview was over. But the impact? It was just beginning.